On today's show, the Cavs sort of play basketball today. Summer League starts. We'll talk about what we should be looking for with the Summer League Cavs on today's edition of Locked on Cavs.
You are Locked on Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked on Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get started here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. Proud part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. The Cleveland Cavaliers will be playing basketball, or at least some guys that do play for the Cleveland Cavaliers and some other guys wearing Cavs jerseys will be playing basketball today as Summer League opens up out in Las Vegas. Tip-off for the Cavs' first Summer League game is today at 5 o'clock against the Indiana Pacers. Maybe they'll make it 4-2 after this one. I have no idea. But there are some things to watch for. And before we dive into it, because I do think that Jaylon Tyson is important. I do think that Craig Porter Jr. is important. I do think that Tyrese Proctor is important. And I'm going to talk about why all three of those guys have important things in this Summer League, things to watch for over the next 10 days or so as Summer League gets underway. I do think it is important that we don't necessarily overreact to what we see one way or another as Summer League gets here, because these are not obviously real basketball games. They are, like the idea of basketball games, but this isn't something that should necessarily be compared to a regular season game or even a preseason game for that matter. I do think that you're not necessarily looking at the results of the game. Like if the Cavs win today, that's great. If they don't, that's great too. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change the outcome of anything. If anything, this franchise already has a Summer League championship under its belt. I don't know that grabbing another one is the most important thing right now. But there are important things that will come out of Las Vegas, and the team will play 5 games at least. 4 of them are currently scheduled. They play today, Saturday, Sunday, and then Wednesday. And then after that, they will be seeded to maybe be in the playoffs of the Summer League, or they will play a 5th consolation game. But they will get 5 games in Vegas. And of course, as I mentioned, the 3 most notable guys playing in Summer League are Jaylon Tyson, Craig Porter Jr., and Tyrese Proctor. And what do all 3 of those guys have in common? All 3 of those guys are on standard NBA contracts with the Cavs. So they are true full-time members of the Cleveland Cavaliers playing in Summer League games. Of course, Naquan Tomlin, who is on a 2-way contract with the Cavs, will be playing in Summer League. He's the other guy that's going to be on the Summer League team that you should expect to see in some Cavs games this year. Luke Travers not on the Summer League roster, despite the fact that he has signed a 2-way contract with the Cavs for next season. But I think that the 3 guys that are on standard contracts are the ones to watch in Summer League. And this is not some breaking news thing, right? Like you didn't need to flip on this podcast today and get into it to hear me say, yeah, we should be watching those 3 guys and think, wow, that's a really, really astute point, Danny. Like, no, obviously, like that is the thing. But I think there are specific things to look for with each of those 3 guys as we watch these Summer League games. And I want to start with Jaylon Tyson, because as I look at this rotation, I think that he is the one that maybe should have the most expectations on him next season as part of the actual Cavs, not the Summer League Cavs, but the actual Cavs. Of course, this is Tyson's 2nd Summer League after he was the number 20 overall draft pick last year by the Cavaliers. I thought he had a solid summer session last year. We'll see what he can do this year after not really getting a ton of playing time with the Cavs. Now, normally you would say, well, the number 20 overall pick, a guy that, wasn't a lottery selection, but mid first round pick, didn't play a ton. Okay, I get that. But on a 64 win team that for the most part stayed relatively healthy, there just wasn't a ton of playing time. Like, I don't think that this was necessarily something Jaylon Tyson did wrong throughout the year. I just do think that you look at how the Cavs are constructed and who are you going to take minutes away from on a team that won 64 games. I'm sure Jaylen would have liked to play more. I imagine that Jaylen has plans to play a lot more in year number 2. But there are certain things that I look at that we can find out or we can see or just things to watch for with Jaylen. And I think the goal for him for year number 2 in Summer League should be to stand out. And when a guy like Jaylon Tyson goes back to Summer League for the second year, it's not always the worst thing. Omar Cook, who is the Cavs Summer League head coach, made a comment earlier this week when he spoke with us and talked about, it's not a punishment for somebody like Jaylon Tyson or even a Craig Porter Jr. to be back at Summer League again. I think for Jaylen, this is a really good opportunity. And I think it's a little bit of a different situation between he and Craig, and I will talk about that in a little bit when I get to Craig. But with Jaylen, I do think that this is an opportunity to show how much he has grown as, a 1-year veteran of the NBA, how much he has changed as somebody who has been in the NBA now for a full 12 months after being drafted 20th overall. I think that's how this should be looked at. So I do think listen, there have been a lot of players that have gone on to have really, really strong careers that have played multiple years in Summer League. Like, this is not Jaylon Tyson's going back for year number 2 of Summer League, he's not going to be a good player. That's not how this works. Like, for instance, and this is an extreme example, Jaylen Brown played 2 years of Summer League with the Celtics. So for that to happen, okay, well, not saying Jaylon Tyson's going to be Jaylen Brown, but that is it just does happen. It's not that big of a deal that he's going back for year number 2. Now, that said, I do think that this is a chance for him to stand out, because when you look at guys, especially guys that are first round draft picks that go back for year number 2, oftentimes if things go well, you watch them play and you can just kind of instantly pick them out. Like, they kind of stick out like a sore thumb. It's like, you know what, you don't belong here. You are a better basketball player than almost everybody on the floor. You know what you're doing. You have a better feel for the NBA game. And it's not to say that, if Jaylen does that, he's going to go out and have a better career than everybody else there. But for instance, you look at somebody that is maybe a higher draft pick, that's a rookie trying to figure things out. They're trying to get their feet wet in the NBA. Jaylen has already done all of those things. So this should be more of a business as usual thing. And I do think he should be able to have a good couple of games, stand out, and then maybe play as well as to the fact that the Cavs say, you know what, we have seen enough from you. You don't have to play in games 3, 4, and 5. You had 2 really strong games on Thursday and Saturday, Sunday and Wednesday. Be on the bench, support your teammates, but you have proven everything that you've needed to prove. Now, as far as the things that he actually does need to prove, because let's think back to last year with Summer League, right? Jaylen, I thought, was solid. He had a good Summer League, but he was doing a lot of things that were never going to be asked or expected of him when the regular season arrived, right? If you think back to last Summer League, he had the basketball in his hands pretty frequently, and obviously on a roster that has Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, that's not going to be what he has to do. He's not going to be somebody that's going to have to be on the basketball. He's going to play off the ball much more. So that's why I do think it is a good thing for him that Craig Porter Jr. is here and that Tyrese Proctor is going to be there too, because both of those guys can play a little bit more on the ball. And I think that can get Jaylen maybe not into the exact role that you would expect to have him in with the Cavs when the regular season does start in October. But I think it can put him in a role that is closer to that. The other things that I look at, what does his shot look like? How has that improved? Because I do think that's an area that is maybe not a make or break thing for Jaylon Tyson. Like, obviously, if he becomes a 40% three-point shooter, he's going to be awesome. But if he's a 35% three-point shooter, is that good enough considering all the other stuff that he should be able to do? Where is that at? Is the rebounding at the same level that it was? And truthfully, the one other thing that I look at with Jaylon Tyson as a way that he can impact basketball games for the Cavs is I look at a lot of the hustle stuff. And I do think it's maybe a little bit easier to do that sort of stuff in the NBA, like in regular season games when you are the 9th or 10th guy and you're playing 15 minutes a night and you basically, your job is dependent on doing those things. Where in Summer League, like his performance is not going to be, judged a success or failure based on whether or not he tracks down all these loose basketballs. But I do think doing that would be a really good sign, because I do think that is going to be something that is part of who he needs to be as an NBA player to fit in with this Cavs rotation. Certainly, at least right now, maybe not 3, 4, 5 years down the line. If he does pan out as a player, he'll have a different role. I don't know. But as of right now, like, I do think that is something that you look at and say, okay, if Jaylon Tyson's going to pan out, he has to do all these little things really well. And I think that Summer League is a great opportunity for him to try and play in a role that's going to be similar, just, a little bit higher usage, but similar in terms of where he's getting the basketball and how often the basketball is in his hands, but maybe a little uptick in usage for what we will see with the Cavs, and then still doing all those little things that the Cavs are going to be asking him to do when the regular season does arrive in October. Those are the things that I think we should be looking out for Jaylon Tyson. And truthfully, he's a good basketball player. I have no reason to think that he's not going to pan out as of right now, but seeing him stick out like a sore thumb today and Saturday, I think would be the best possible thing for Jaylon Tyson. Now, the new guy, Tyrese Proctor. What are we expecting to see from him? What would mark a good Summer League for Tyrese Proctor? We're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can, because whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. That is what you want to be doing. You want to be building your wealth. Yeah, managing money, it happens. You got to do it day to day, but you want to see those accounts grow bigger. That is what building your wealth is all about. So if that sounds good to you and you want to take control of your finances like you should, head on over to Monarch Money. So take control of those finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for half off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Make sure you do subscribe as you are listening. And Tyrese Proctor will be making his debut in a Cavs uniform, so to speak, today when the Cavs take on the Indiana Pacers in their first Summer League action. Of course, there's a lot to watch for with Tyrese Proctor, probably more so than Jaylon Tyson, then Craig Porter Jr., the guy I just talked about, the guy I'm going to talk about in a second, because we've seen those guys already play for the Cavs. We've not seen anything other than getting some post-shooting or some post-practice shooting drills over at Cleveland courts. We've not seen Proctor do anything yet. So this is going to be one of the more hyped debuts for a number 49 overall draft pick. But I do think there's a lot to be excited about here, because I don't think that had the Cavs not thought that he is somebody worth developing, somebody that could help them out, maybe this season, maybe not this season, but I don't think they would have given him the contract that they gave him had that not been the case. So Proctor, of course, as I mentioned, was the number 49 overall pick out of Duke, and he was given a multi-year standard contract, which is very different than what most of the guys drafted in that neighborhood are now getting in the NBA draft. Typically, guys in that spot, think back to Emoni Bates, are getting two-way contracts. Proctor was given a standard contract for multiple years, so he will be part of the Cavs' 15, probably actually 14-man roster when the season begins. So Proctor making his debut, there's a lot of things that I'm interested in seeing. One of them is, how athletic does he look on the floor? Because he is, I do think, a good athlete, certainly for his size. He is every bit, I think, of 6'5", in seeing him the other day at the facility and talking to him a little bit. I do think he's around 6'4", 6'5". So he's not a small guard, and I was having this conversation with somebody. I have gotten to the point where I care a little bit less about guard size and care more about how big the guard plays. For instance, Donovan Mitchell is listed at 6'3". He might be a little bit under 6'3", but he does not play basketball the way somebody that size plays basketball. He plays bigger than he is. Ty Jerome, who is every bit of 6'5", does not play like somebody who is 6'5". I think Ty Jerome actually plays like a smaller guard than Donovan Mitchell does. Now, Tyrese Proctor is in between them as far as size goes, but one of the things at Duke that he could have done better, I thought, just from seeing the stuff that I have seen and certainly reading a lot of draft profiles of him, but one of the knocks on him is that he doesn't necessarily get to the basket as frequently as he should. And that to me is something that I would like to see change if I'm the Cavs. I do think that is something that they should strive to improve upon. If he can get to the basket a little bit more frequently and get 2 feet in the paint when he does have the basketball in his hands by beating guys off the dribble on the perimeter, when he does have the basketball in his hands, I think that would be a really good sign. I think that is one of the things that we should be looking for from him in Summer League. The other thing to watch is just how real is that shot. He shot 40% from beyond the arc in his junior season at Duke. In seeing him the last couple of days go through post-practice shooting drills after Summer League practices at Cleveland Clinic courts, his shot looked really good. He's got awesome form. He was doing a shooting drill with Jaylon Tyson where it was about having a quick release. And I mean, his release can be lightning fast. I don't think that he's necessarily going to rush it every time, but I do think that he's got a very smooth, quick release that I do think should translate to being a very good shooter in the NBA. You know, I don't know that he's going to come in right away and be a 40% three-point shooter, but if we're 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I would not be surprised if Tyrese Proctor is at a certain point a 40% three-point shooter from distance. I just think that is something that could be part of his game. I just wonder, is that going to be the only thing that's part of his game? How much more is there for him offensively? How much is it playmaking for others? How much is it getting downhill with the basketball in his hands? Those are the things that I do think we'd like to learn a little bit more about as he does get started with Summer League today. Now, what's he look like defensively? I don't know. We'll find out against better competition, certainly, than what he faced at Duke. So that'll be a very interesting thing to follow. But I do think one of the benefits that Proctor has is that while he was at Duke, he played in a number of different roles. He sort of started out his freshman year as more of an on-ball creator, and he kind of faded from his freshman year to, you know, the conclusion of his junior season from an on-ball guy to more of an off-ball guy. And I think, as you know, I just mentioned with Jaylon Tyson, I think that is something that is a really positive sign, because it is one thing, and maybe Duke is a little bit different than Jaylen playing at Cal and even Texas Tech, where he was always going to be the best player on his teams, where Tyrese Proctor was, you know, despite the fact that he's somebody that probably does have some sort of NBA future, whether it's a long one, a short one, he's going to be in the NBA. Despite the fact that he is an NBA player, he was never the best player on his college team, which is not a very common thing. When you think of some of the guys that he played with at Duke, just go like the entire starting 5 at Duke was drafted this year, and Proctor was the 5th guy to get drafted. He played with Jared McCain. He played with Derek Lively, Kyle Filipowski. Like, he has played with some really, really good basketball players in college. So I do think that can sort of, for him, ease the transition from going to Duke to, even if it's just Summer League, to the NBA. And as I mentioned, you know, there's a goal that Jaylon Tyson should have. I think the goal for Tyrese Proctor, I said for Jaylon Tyson, it should be to stand out. I think for Tyrese Proctor, it should be to fit in. Look like an NBA player. Look like you belong. And because there are a lot of times where somebody drafted in his area code of the draft doesn't look like they belong in Summer League. They don't necessarily look like an NBA player or even a future NBA player. Can Proctor look like an NBA player? I think that is the fair goal for him. I think it's certainly an obtainable one, because when we talk about Tyrese Proctor, we've not talked about him the way that we talk about a typical number 49 overall pick. And that sort of comes with the territory when you're talking about a guy that, the Cavs selected because they were able to find a way to get him to fall to 49. It wasn't because he fell to 49 because a bunch of teams thought that he stunk. He fell to 49 in part because his representation told other teams, do not select Tyrese Proctor. We have a landing spot for him. They did. That landing spot was Cleveland, and we'll see if it pays off for the Cavs. But he's not a typical number 49 overall pick because that. He's somebody that probably should have gone 10 to 15 picks prior to when he was actually selected. So does he look like somebody that you can say at the end of the Summer League, say, you know what, I'm not sure how Tyrese Proctor didn't get drafted in the first round. So if he fits in, I think that is one of the things that we might be saying about him when Summer League is over. All right, there's one more guy. It's Craig Porter Jr. What is Summer League for the third time going to look like for Craig? How important is this? What should his goal be? We'll answer all of that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Craig Porter Jr. is playing in Summer League for his third time as a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I talked about this with Jaylon Tyson, how maybe it's not a rarity for guys to go back for a second season, but going back for a third season when you've been on a standard NBA contract for 3 seasons is a rarity. That is not something that happens very often. And I think that makes this a very important stretch of games for Craig Porter Jr. I think that there is some development that maybe hasn't happened yet that everybody expected to happen. I certainly expected Craig, and maybe part of this is Ty Jerome just had such a great season that there wasn't as much room for Craig Porter Jr. as we may have thought there would have been prior to this season. But I thought Craig would have come along a little bit more than he has at this point in his career. So Craig Porter Jr. talked the other day, and he sounded like somebody, and Craig is not somebody that talks on the record very frequently, but he sounded like somebody who gets it. Maybe gets it in a way that he didn't get it before. And one of the things that he said that stuck out to me was that he wants to be the best player on this Summer League team. He wants to take on that Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell Summer League role. Obviously, when things go back to real basketball in October, that's not going to be who Craig Porter Jr. is. That's not what he's going to be asked to do. But I think doing it in this setting is the right mindset to have. Because I think that's the mindset that speaks to he needs to go out and be a little bit more aggressive than he's been. He needs to go out and he needs to, I think, play a little bit harder even at times than maybe he has during his NBA career. And I think if you look at Darius, if you look at Donovan, the guys that he talked about trying to emulate their roles, those are things that those guys do, right? So can Craig Porter Jr. be the star of this Summer League team? I don't know if he can, because I do think if he plays well, this might be a situation where he plays the first 2 games, maybe the first 3 games, and then the Cavs decide, hey, we have seen enough. You have accomplished the goals here. We're going to shut you down. Stick around, support your teammates, get some workouts in, but you don't have to play in the games anymore. That could be a situation that we do encounter here. But I think the goal for Craig should be the best player on the team. Be the star of this Summer League team. Play so well in the first 2 or 3 games that the Cavs say, you know what, we don't need, you are above playing in Summer League. Not to say that it was some mistake to take him to Vegas to play, because I don't think that's the case. I think it's a good thing that Craig Porter Jr. is there. I was a little surprised to see him on the roster, but I think ultimately it's a good thing for him and something that he probably needs as far as his development goes. I think so. If he can go out there and use it as a certain type of motivation too, because as I mentioned earlier, Omar Cook talked about this not being some punishment for Jaylon Tyson and Craig Porter Jr. I think with Jaylon Tyson, I think that this is something that should have been expected. I think it's a good step for him. I think that this is exactly where he should be. And if you would have told me a year ago that to predict the Cavs Summer League roster for 2025 and also told me, by the way, the Cavs are going to win 64 games, I probably would have said, well, I'm not sure Jaylon Tyson was in the rotation if they won that many games, because it means things really clicked with a lot of guys, which would then mean Jaylon Tyson's probably playing in Summer League, which is not a big deal. But if you would have told me last year that Craig Porter Jr. would be back in Vegas for a third Summer League, I would have probably not believed that. I would not have guessed that he was going to be on this Summer League roster because, as I mentioned, guys typically don't go back for a third Summer League when they're on a standard contract. So I do look at this and say, okay, not that it's punishment for Craig Porter Jr., but I do think that this should be motivation. I think that this should serve to him, maybe not as a wake-up call. I think that's probably a little bit too strong, but I do think something along those lines to where it's like, okay, this is the opportunity. If Craig Porter Jr. is going to hit as a member of the Cavs, it's kind of getting to now or never time. And I think that this now or never time can start today in Vegas. I do think that having a good summer league for him is the key to having a really good rest of the summer, coming back in September for, the non-mandatory, or I guess voluntary would have been the correct word to use there, workouts, and then training camp, and getting to a point where Kenny Atkinson doesn't have a choice but to play Craig Porter Jr. when the regular season rolls around in October. I think Summer League for him can serve as a springboard to that. And I think for him to do that, being the best player on this Summer League roster is exactly what his goal should be. And if that's the case, we probably shouldn't see him after Sunday. I am very certainly excited to see just basketball again. It feels like it has been forever since we've watched the Cavs play basketball. I will have a podcast tomorrow talking about what happens in today's first Summer League game. I can't promise it's going to be the entire podcast because, as I said at the top, the one thing we are not going to do is overreact to Summer League. Good or bad, we are not going to overreact to it. But I will have a podcast talking about what happens in game number 1 against Indiana. And then I will be on Sunday flying out to Vegas. I will be there for game 3 on Sunday, game 4 on Wednesday for the Cavs. So I will have all of my episodes will be from either inside the Thomas and Mack Center, in random places in Las Vegas, but I will be covering Summer League for the back half of it, not going the first weekend, but we'll be going for games 3 and 4. Certainly very excited to see what the Summer League Cavs look like. There's a lot to look forward to. I think it's a very exciting time and certainly fun to see what some of the younger guys can do. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs today your first listen. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And hit that thumbs up button on YouTube as we get out of here. I will be back tomorrow talking just a little bit more about the Summer League Cleveland Cavaliers.